Hey, everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Just Add Water. I'm your host, Christoph Michaels, and today I want to talk about a subject that's pretty near and dear and close to my heart, depression, anxiety. There's millions of people that battle with depression and anxiety in this country every year. Depression's taken the lives of of you know of a lot of our friends, loved ones. You see famous people every day fighting with depression, and I just want to talk about my own personal experiences with fighting both of them, and basically kind of let this be a little bit of like I guess therapy or a teaching moment for other people that may be suffering as well. Um, so the ADAA, according to their website, over 40 million people uh, have anxiety, but only less than 40% of people actually get treated for their anxiety. And the average age for major depression is 32, and roughly about 16 million people um, suffer from some form of depression. And women are more likely than men to suffer from depression as well. The stats, according to the CDC, uh, are 10% for women versus 5% for men. I would say I've struggled with depression for most of my adult life. I had moments when I was a teenager as well, and uh, I always kind of felt that something was either wrong or something was off. I had um, I had either negative thoughts or I had thoughts, and I've never told anybody this, but I had I had suicidal borderline thoughts when I was in my late teens and in my early 20s. Um, I never I never wanted to necessarily act out on that, but I always had those thoughts at least in my head. And depression, it my depression and my anxiety as well, it got worse and worse as I got older. I realized that I would shut myself off from I would shut myself off from family, from friends. There were days where I would not want to get up out of bed and go to work. There were days where I would either call off sick from work or I wouldn't even show up to work at all, and I wouldn't tell anybody, and I would just stay in bed for most of the day and just sit there and just either like think about how depressing my life is, or I would just spend a lot of time just in bed sleeping. The important thing about depression is that I think that if you suffer from depression or from anxiety, I think the important thing is to um, definitely talk to family first, um, because I didn't realize that um, I found out that depression, you know, runs in my family, or at least possibly runs in my family. My grandmother, uh, my grandmother suffered from it. My uh, and my mom suffers from it as well. And when I was in roughly my early to mid 20s, I had a conversation with my mom about about depression and how it may run in the family, and how it affects her. And so after I had that talk with her, she told me that she was on she was on medication, and I had thought about taking medication and things like that, but I really wasn't sure if the medication was right for me. And I decided to go to my doctor and talk to him about some of the things that I had felt over the years. So when I went to my doctor, he basically gave me a test, and it asked maybe about like 10 questions or so, mainly pertaining about to like um, how I feel on any given day. So after that, he looked at the test, scored it, and I found out that I suffer from depression. And so he prescribed me with medication. Now, I'm not saying that medication is for everybody. There's certain methods, certain ways to treat depression. Of course, I personally I personally take multiple methods to treat my depression and my anxiety as well. Let's see. I along with the medication, um, I work out sometimes. Talk to friends. Talk to a counselor. And that definitely helps a lot. And if you can't afford a counselor, there definitely are affordable options, as far as seeking help, and there are 1-800 numbers that can help you, if you're not having a great day, to say the least. And I'll mention those numbers later on in the show, and I'll have some links and stuff like that in my show notes. I've been on my medication for um, roughly 10 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. Um, and just a little note that if you do get on any kind of medication, that there are side effects that you'll notice pretty early on. I remember when I first took my medication, um, so they gradually build you up. So my doctor gave me a starter pack or whatever. So the first maybe I can't remember because it was so long ago, but the first maybe 2 or 3 days they start you off with, I believe, like 5 milligrams. Then a few days after that they build you up to 10, and they build you up to 25, and then eventually I think they build you up to 50 milligrams. So one of the first symptoms or side effects, I should say, when I first took my medication was that I was sleepy a lot. Um, so for those of you that are on medication, I know that a lot of you can relate to this. And for those who are thinking about taking medication, just be sure to keep the side effects in mind, and to be aware of things that you're doing. So I was sleepy a lot when I first took my medication. Um, yeah, I was sleepy a lot. I would want to take naps for a while, and um, one of the other things, I had headaches. I think early on when I when I took my medication as well. But one of the more, on a funny note, one of the more significant side effects is that your sex drive changes. Um, uh, I, I I remember um, I remember there were times that I couldn't finish. Like I would be in the middle of, I would be in the middle of a act with somebody and I couldn't finish. I mean, it's the brutal, honest truth. Like depression medication, it will destroy your sex drive early on. You'll get over that eventually. It took me a couple of months before I was able to manage to or it took a couple of months, I should say, for my body to get used uh to the medication and to kind of like balance that out and stuff like that. But it will change your sex drive dramatically. There'll be times you may you may not even want to have sex for like days or even weeks because your like sex drive is just totally thrown off. But the thing that really made me really want to make this episode of the podcast was that um, I've been going back and seeing my counselor lately, which has really helped, and really even making this podcast has helped as well. But really, my uh, a lot of my favorite heroes have passed away within the last several years because they suffered from depression. Um, let's see, Carrie Fisher, Anthony Bourdain, Robin Williams. They all suffered from depression, and I want this podcast in general, but especially this episode, to be some kind of outlet for people and give people something that they can kind of relate and connect to, or if they're not, you know, uh, or if they don't feel comfortable talking with family or friends, at least this can be some sort of an outlet for them. Plus, two, I feel that mental health in this country is something that doesn't get addressed properly as what it should. I think, and I have even felt this way myself, and to a degree, I still do. But um, many people that I know, and including myself, feel ashamed to talk about it, to even mention it to family or friends or anything like that. So that's definitely why part of the reason why I created this podcast. And one thing I think is that uh, I think depression is an ongoing thing. I think there's uh, no all out cure for depression, but there's ways of coping with it. There's ways of of living with it, and so that it's not a constant burden um, to bear on your shoulders on a regular basis. As far as the anxiety of things, I would say I've had anxiety most of my life. I've noticed the anxiety probably more so as I get older. Uh, I it's hard for me to be in large crowds or around a large group of people. Um, I like it feels like there's just this huge just weight on my chest, and like I either like can't talk or can't breathe, or there's a million thoughts just going through my freaking head, and it's just hard to like let it out and deal with all that. And a lot of times, honestly, I just feel like staying home and not doing anything really. Those of you uh, who are friends and listen to this podcast know that I talk with a stammer occasionally, and I've lived with that to my entire life. So I think that contributes to a lot of my anxiety as well. I have a fear of public speaking, of speaking in crowds, uh, and that contributes to, like I said, the anxiety and even to my depression as well. My depression and my anxiety, it's been one of those things too that has definitely affected my love life as well. Uh, being with my ex, it having uh, depression and anxiety really put a strain on our relationship. We're still friends, and I love her to death, but yeah, but there were just some days where you know there were I just couldn't tell her how I feel or communicate, or because there were days where I I thought that she wouldn't understand how I felt, or there were days that I was ashamed to tell her how I would feel, and there were days where I had anxiety and I just didn't want to talk to anyone at all, and that really put a strain on our relationship, and that's something that I regret to this day, and I regret not getting help for that sooner, or getting help while I was in a relationship with her at the time. But it's one of those things you kind of live and you learn. But I will say she definitely was a great human being, and she was totally loving and understanding of what I was going through for sure. I know a lot of times with my anxiety, it's preventing me from going to a lot of parties or hanging out with friends or people that I know, because I'm always like worried about, am I gonna do something wrong? Am I gonna say the wrong thing? And I always got and I always have about a million thoughts running through my head like nonstop. And I kind of get to the point where I kind of talk myself out of going to a party or going to certain events and hanging out with people. I've always been kind of a loner of sorts. I never really had a large group of friends. I have people that I talk to on a casual basis. I mainly talk to them on the internet and stuff like that on a casual basis, uh, but for the most part, I'm pretty much a loner, and I guess that's part of where my anxiety uh, kind of roots and comes into play as well, and really even my depression for that matter. There's days sometimes that I wish that there was a on and off switch that I could just make my brain just shut off and just and just think that I'm not going to be worried or not going to be depressed. But it's a challenge, and it's something that I learned to live with, and that's a part of me. But one thing I realize is that I don't let those things define who I am. I feel like I'm more than my depression and my anxiety. There's more to me than just those things. Those are just, minor things that, or like, I shouldn't say minor, but those are just things that I deal with on a regular basis, but they're not at the forefront of who I am. So I encourage you all, if you suffer from depression, you know anybody that suffers from depression, or that you think might be suffering from depression, talk to somebody. It doesn't matter if it's a counselor, if it's a friend, family, hell, you can even talk to just a coworker, or just anybody with an open ear, and that's like willing to talk, because a lot of times it's just good just to get stuff off your chest, and just to kind of let stuff go after a while, and not let it build up. The Anxiety and Depression Association of America has some great tips, and some outreach, where you can get suggestions, or get get uh, get some kind of outreach, or you can find a therapist or anything like that. You can go on adaa.org, and you can get all the information and outreach and stuff like that on living with depression, and what other people may go through as well. And as I probably mentioned before, all treatment, uh, certain treatments work for certain people. Some people uh, do yoga. Some people meditate. People listen to music. Other people talk to friends or therapists. Other people exercise. Other people take medications. But uh, everybody is going to have uh, different things that help them out, and help them uh, come to balance with their life. I know next spring I'm gonna be trying to get over my anxiety hump. I'm gonna try to go on a kind of group tour vacation thing. Try to meet some new people. Kind of step outside my comfort zone a little bit, and plus two, I kind of want to see other parts of the country, and um, down the line, I want to see other parts of the world as well. So I'm going to be doing that in the spring, just to kind of break up the monotony of everyday life, kind of get my mind off anything. But um, that's just my own personal. That's my own personal story, and it's just something that I wanted to share with everybody. And lastly, I'll say this: always take the moment to try to empathize with another human being. Take the moment, if you notice that somebody may not be having a great day, just like, you don't even have to really just say anything. You could just give that person a hug. You can just put your hand on their shoulder, and little things like that will mean so much to somebody in the long term, that could really help them out for sure. Anyway, that's all I got for this episode. I'll probably have a little bit more to say on the subject, possibly in a future episode. I don't have any recommendations for this week. I'll probably have some in the next episode. Have a couple of ideas and stuff in the chamber. Probably sometime next month. Once I'm able to take the show mobile, I'm gonna try to get some of my friends and people that I know and stuff like that that are in bands, and I'm gonna try to get some of their music onto the show. Kind of introduce you to them, to people I know, and introduce some really good music. Probably one of the next episodes I'm gonna do is why we in America eat like shit. Why why is some fast food so easy to get? Why it's so cheap and easy to get? Why is it so hard for some cities that are basically food deserts to get healthy and quality food that doesn't have a lot of sugar and fat in it? So yeah, so I'm going to be talking about that in the next episode probably. So until then, I will see you next time.